The banquet hall glowed with warm golden lights, as if happiness itself had been carefully arranged in crystal chandeliers and silk drapes. Soft music floated through the air, mixing with laughter, clinking glasses, and congratulatory applause. At the center of it all stood my brother, Arav, my little brother, smiling shyly beside Ria, his soon-to-be wife. I watched him from a distance, my heart full and heavy at the same time. He looked confident tonight. Loved, safe, and after everything we had survived, that was all I ever wanted for him. I smoothed the fabric of my simple navy blue dress, suddenly aware of how plain it looked among the embroidered saris and designer gowns surrounding me. Women passed by in glittering jewelry, men in tailored suits, all radiating a kind of effortless success I had long stopped trying to display. Still, I stood tall. Family members I barely recognized came over with polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Their glances lingered on me just long enough to measure my worth. "So you're Arav's sister," one woman said, tilting her head slightly. "You're very simple." Simple, the word landed softly, yet it bruised. "Yes," I replied with a small smile. "Nice to meet you." Behind me, whispers floated freely, careless and sharp. "She doesn't look like much. I heard she lives alone. Poor thing, must depend on her brother now." I pretended not to hear, focusing instead on Arav's laughter, as Ria teased him on stage. Every laugh of his felt like a reward for years of sacrifice, and I reminded myself why I was here. To celebrate him, not myself. At the dinner table, the questions began. "So, what do you do?" Ria's cousin asked, smiling too brightly. Before I could answer, my aunt quickly intervened. "She's still figuring things out." Figuring things out? The table hummed with amused understanding, as if that phrase explained everything about my life. "Oh, that's nice," the cousin said. "No stress, no deadlines." A man across from me leaned forward, confidence dripping from his voice. "I work at Orion Tech," he announced. "Great company, tough to get into." Several heads turned toward him with admiration. "Ever heard of it?" he asked me, lips curling into a smirk. "Yes," I said quietly, "I have." "Well," he chuckled, "not everyone is cut out for corporate life." Laughter followed, light and careless. I lowered my gaze to my plate, my appetite gone. My fingers tightened slightly around my fork, but my face remained calm. I had learned long ago how to smile through discomfort, how to swallow words that deserved to be spoken. Arav caught my eye from across the room. For a moment his smile faded. He always knew when I was hurting. I gave him a reassuring nod. "Don't worry about me, because tonight wasn't about the whispers or the mocking glances. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about my brother stepping into a future brighter than the past we had survived together. And for him, I would endure the judgment in silence, even as the room slowly decided who they thought I was." The laughter around the table faded into a dull echo as I excused myself and walked toward the balcony. The cool night air brushed against my face, offering a brief escape from the suffocating warmth of polite cruelty inside the hall. Below, the city lights shimmered like distant stars, unreachable, untouchable. I rested my hands on the railing and exhaled slowly. It wasn't the first time I had been looked at like this, judged, dismissed, reduced to a quiet, unimpressive footnote in someone else's success story. Still, the pain never fully disappeared. It only learned how to hide. Inside, the music swelled again, and with it came memories I had buried deep. After our parents died, Arav was only 17. I was 20, 3 terrified, grieving, and suddenly responsible for 2 lives instead of 1. I remembered sitting on the floor of our tiny apartment, bills spread around me like accusations, wondering how survival had become my full-time job overnight. I gave up my final year of university without telling anyone, sold my gold bangles, the last gift my mother had given me. Took up freelance work, teaching myself to code at night while RAF slept, promising myself that he would never feel the weight of my sacrifices. No one at tonight's celebration knew that story. They didn't know how many times I had failed before I succeeded. How many investors laughed at my pitch. How many doors closed before one finally opened. They didn't see the nights I cried into my pillow from exhaustion, or the mornings I woke up stronger simply because I had no choice. Behind me the balcony door opened. "There you are," a voice said lightly. "We were wondering where you disappeared." It was Ria's friend, followed by two others, their expressions carefully polite. "We were just talking." One of them continued about how brave it is to attend events like this when you're still finding yourself. The words were wrapped in sweetness, but the intent was sharp. "Yes," another added with a small laugh. "Not everyone needs ambition, right?" I turned to face them, meeting their eyes calmly. "Everyone has ambition," I said softly. "It just looks different." They exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed. "Well," one shrugged, "as long as you're happy." They walked back inside, satisfied with their small victory. I stayed where I was, my reflection staring back at me through the glass doors. The woman looking at me didn't appear broken or defeated. She looked tired but steady, grounded, powerful in ways that didn't ask for approval. What hurt the most wasn't the stranger's mockery. It was how easy it was for people to assume they knew my worth based on what I didn't flaunt. Inside the hall, someone laughed loudly. I heard Orion Tech mentioned again, followed by proud voices and self-important stories. I closed my eyes briefly. If only they knew. If only they understood that the life they admired, the careers they boasted about, were connected to choices I made in silence. That the company they praised was born from sleepless nights and desperation, not privilege. But I said nothing. Because revealing the truth wasn't about anger, it was about timing. I returned to the hall, my posture straighter, my expression serene. I congratulated Arav again, hugged Rio warmly, and accepted smiles that suddenly felt heavier than before. Each mocking comment, each careless laugh, etched itself into my memory, not as a wound but as a reminder. A reminder of how far I had come. A reminder that strength didn't always announce itself, and when the time came, I wouldn't need to raise my voice to be heard. The scars I carried were silent, yes, but they were the very reason I stood unshaken. And soon, silence would speak for itself. The hall buzzed with chatter and laughter as the engagement ceremony moved toward its peak. Toasts were being raised, congratulations exchanged, and every detail, every shimmering drape, every carefully arranged flower, seemed designed to celebrate not just my brother, but the wealth, status, and pride of the families around him. I sat quietly at our table, Arav beside me, sensing his subtle worry as he noticed the sly glances directed my way. I didn't need to explain. He knew. He always knew. Ria's father took the stage, microphone in hand. "It is a pleasure to see so many successful people joining our family," he announced, voice loud and proud. Engineers, managers, doctors, employees of Orion Tech. Heads turned toward me, and I could feel the unspoken judgment ripple through the room. Orion Tech, that name had sparked laughter, pride, and an undeniable air of superiority among several guests. Several of them sat there tonight, unaware that the very company they bragged about, one they clung to for status, had roots tied to someone they dismissed as quiet, simple, aimless. "And of course," he continued, "family support is always appreciated." A few chuckles followed, polite and sharp, aimed at me. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. My moment had arrived. The time for silence was over. "May I say something?" I asked, my voice calm but carrying through the hall. All chatter halted. All eyes turned toward me. A hush fell like a sudden wave. "I've heard a lot about Orion Tech tonight. I began softly, meeting each gaze with unwavering composure. I'm pleased to see the company and its employees represented so proudly here. Confusion flickered across many faces. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I should probably introduce myself properly. I continued, smiling gently. My name is Ananya Sharma. The room blinked, startled by the familiarity of the name, yet nothing seemed to click. And I am the founder and sole owner of Orion Tech. The silence was immediate and deafening. Forks paused midair. Conversations froze, faces drained of color. A man who had laughed at me earlier seemed to shrink in place. Someone's glass slipped from their hand, shattering against the floor, echoing like a verdict. That's not possible. Someone whispered, disbelief thick in their tone. You, the quiet girl? Yes, I said calmly. The same quiet girl you decided to mock tonight. The one you assumed had no ambition. The one you thought would never amount to anything. I built the company you so proudly call your own. Workplace from the ground up, with nothing but determination and sleepless nights. I paused, letting the words settle like stones in their stomachs. You judged me because you saw only what I didn't flaunt, I said. You laughed at me because appearances deceived you. You failed to see the years of effort, the sacrifices, and the relentless work that made me what you are only now recognizing. Shock, fear, and guilt rippled across their faces. Some tried to speak, but no words came. I looked at my brother. Arav's eyes shone with pride and a hint of relief. Relief that someone finally saw, really saw, who I was. Not the assumptions, not the whispers, not the judgment, but me. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted silently, not through anger, not through vengeance yet, but through the undeniable truth of who I was. Tonight, silence had spoken, and when it did, it demanded recognition. The hall remained silent, every eye locked on me as if the room itself were holding its breath. Some faces were pale, some frozen in disbelief, and others hovered on the edge of embarrassment, so sharp it almost hurt to look at them. I didn't move hastily. I didn't raise my voice. I allowed the silence to stretch, thick and deliberate, like a mirror reflecting the truth they had refused to see. I didn't come here to shame anyone. I said finally, my voice calm, measured, and this isn't about revenge. A subtle shift of tension ran through the guests, some leaning forward in cautious curiosity. It's about accountability, I continued. About integrity. About understanding that what you think you can mock without consequence can one day look back at you with a quiet but undeniable force. I scanned the faces of those who had ridiculed me tonight. The woman who whispered about my simple life, the man who smirked about Orion Tech, the cousin who chuckled at ambition disguised in humility. They were all caught in a storm of disbelief they hadn't anticipated. You've laughed at me, I said softly, judged me for choices you never had to make, or the battles you never had to fight, and yet every decision I made in silence has brought me here, not to ruin you, but to remind you. I paused, letting my gaze sweep the room, sharp but calm, gentle but unwavering. That power isn't always loud, success isn't always visible, and respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn, even from those you think are beneath you. A quiet murmur passed through the hall. Some tried to speak, only to falter. That faltering, that uncertainty in their eyes, was my first taste of quiet justice. Over the next few hours, the subtle consequences began. I wasn't cruel, but the repercussions of their actions could not be ignored. Emails arrived, reviewing contracts and performance quietly and efficiently. Promotions were reconsidered. Opportunities shifted away from arrogance and favoritism. None of it was public spectacle. No shouting matches, no humiliation, but every step was deliberate, precise, and in its own way, inescapable. I returned to the celebration of my brother and his fiancée, and this time the room felt different. Laughter and conversation flowed, but there was an unspoken recognition now, a cautious respect. People who had sneered at me now watched with careful politeness, measuring their words before they left their lips. I walked over to Arav and hugged him tightly. He buried his face against my shoulder, whispering, "I'm so proud of you. I'm sorry they never saw it sooner." I kissed his forehead and whispered back, "You never needed to see it to know I was enough." That night, as the engagement continued, I realized the sweetest revenge isn't in anger. It isn't in public humiliation or shouting matches. It isn't even in holding grudges. True power, true victory, comes quietly through persistence, through integrity, and through proving the world wrong without ever losing your dignity. The guests may have laughed at me earlier, may have assumed I was powerless or aimless, but the truth had a way of speaking louder than any insult. And when the truth speaks, there is no mistaking it. I walked back to the balcony once more, the city lights below glittering like 1,000 silent witnesses. I smiled, not in triumph, but in peace. Tonight, I hadn't just reclaimed respect. I had reclaimed myself. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. Crescents, sparkles,